Britain, France, Germany, Japan, Russia were destroyed in the war. The United States emerged, and for the rest of the 20th century was the absolute number one economic power in the world. We got used to it. It's not surprising, but it's over. There is now a real competitor. There is another part of the world economy. It's called China and its allies, also known as the BRICS, versus the United States and our allies, known as the G7. The BRICS and China are already a larger, wealthier economic power than the United States and the G7 combined. That is a world-changing reorganization of the world. Every country in the world is adjusting to this new reality.
The US is in serious trouble. Since the end of World War II, no real contender has challenged America's global dominance. But today, something big is happening. Countries from the global south are joining forces, and they have their sights set on shaking up the Western-led system that has ruled for decades. This alliance is called BRICS, and it's made up of 5 powerful nations: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Together, they're crafting a vision of a world where the US no longer calls all the shots. If you think BRICS is just a random collection of emerging economies, you're wrong. This alliance is more than a loose grouping of developing countries. It's a powerhouse with the potential to reshape global economic and political landscapes. In fact, BRICS already has a bigger combined economy than the G7, the group of the world's most advanced economies. And it doesn't stop there. BRICS represents over 40% of the world's population, giving it an unmatched influence in global markets and trade. With the recent addition of new members like Saudi Arabia, Iran, and others, BRICS has also become the largest energy-producing bloc in the world. This makes the group even more formidable as they now control a significant portion of the world's oil and gas resources, giving them the leverage to influence global energy markets in ways the West might not be comfortable with. While BRICS may be leading in terms of economic size and energy production, that's not what's keeping US leaders awake at night. The biggest threat to America isn't in oil reserves or GDP, it's the potential downfall of the US dollar. Since World War II, the dollar has been the world's dominant currency, the foundation of global trade and finance. It's what gives the US the power to sanction countries, control financial systems, and influence economies everywhere.
US dominance in the world is enabled by the strength of the US dollar and the exorbitant privilege that it enjoys arising from the position of the US dollar. The US has 800 military bases around the world. Who is funding those bases? The US taxpayers? Maybe, some. The US can print money. And when the US prints money to finance military bases, in a sense, all of us in Singapore, in China, and Europe are being taxed to finance the security which the US provides. But the manner in which the US has been weaponizing the US dollar and the international financial system is causing many countries to feel aggrieved that, look, this is not reasonable. You are saying that your enemy, who's an old friend, must now be my enemy. And people resent it. Now, maybe they have to listen to the US because for the time being, they need the US. But in their minds, they will say, look, I will find an alternative. And one day, I will find my own way. And I'm surprised in the last few months. Every dinner I attend, every social gathering, people talk about de-dollarization. Now, this is not good for the US. But has the US changed policy? No. They continue to widen the sanction list. So this puzzles me because the very actions of the US is causing the de-dollarization momentum to increase. And I'm quite sure that among the big countries, China, Russia, and others, especially those in the BRICS countries, will want an alternative system, not to replace the current system, but to really tell the US, look, don't overplay this. Because if you do, we have an alternative. The alternative is not as good, but we will not be hostage to the current system.
But BRICS has set its sights on changing the rules of the game. The group is openly discussing reducing their reliance on the dollar by using local currencies in trade and even creating a new global reserve currency. If they succeed, it could be a seismic shift in global finance, pulling the rug out from under the US economy. Suddenly, America's ability to project power and influence would be weakened, and the very system that has propped up US dominance for decades could start to crumble. So why is the US so protective of its dollar dominance? Well, the dollar isn't just a currency, it's a powerful weapon. Over the years, the US has used the dollar's global status to its advantage in ways that go far beyond economics. By controlling the flow of dollars through its financial system, the US can essentially turn the tap off for countries it wants to pressure, imposing sanctions that can cripple economies. Think about it. Iran, Venezuela, and most recently, Russia have all felt the squeeze of US sanctions, which limit their access to dollars and global trade. Without access to the dollar, doing business on the global stage becomes nearly impossible.
Now, I think you must have heard that the United States has been prosecuting several foreign banks, including HSBC, RBS, UBS, Credit Suisse, and Standard Chartered. Now, for example, Standard Chartered Bank was fined $340 million for making payments to Iran. And most Americans reacted with equanimity to this fine paid by Standard Chartered Bank and thought that the bank was just being fined for dealing with the evil Iranian regime. However, few Americans actually noticed that Standard Chartered Bank, which was domiciled in the UK, had broken no British laws and had not violated any UN Security Council sanctions, but because the payments made through the Standard Chartered system went through the New York clearing system, the US dollars entered the territory of US laws, and so Standard Chartered Bank was fined. And this is what is called, by the way, extraterritorial application of domestic laws.
For many countries, this is the problem. They're tired of being at the mercy of US financial dominance. For instance, when the US froze Russia's foreign reserves after the invasion of Ukraine, it sent shockwaves across the world. Suddenly, nations realized that even their own money, if held in dollars or US-controlled systems, could be frozen or seized. This made countries like China and India even more determined to find alternatives. No one wants to be in a position where their economic future is controlled by another country. And it's not just governments feeling the heat. Global businesses also suffer when the US uses its dollar dominance as a political tool. Companies that trade with sanctioned countries risk losing access to the US market or facing hefty fines. For example, BNP Paribas, a French bank, was fined nearly $9 billion for violating US sanctions against Sudan, Cuba, and Iran. That's why more and more countries are looking for ways to trade outside the dollar system. Let's not forget the numbers. Around 60% of global foreign exchange reserves are still held in dollars, and roughly 88% of all international trade involves the dollar. That's a lot of power for the US, but here's the thing, if enough countries start moving away from the dollar, that dominance could start to erode. And this isn't just a hypothetical scenario. BRICS countries are already taking steps to trade in their own currencies. China, for example, has been pushing to settle oil trades with Russia in yuan. India is doing something similar with Russia, paying for oil in rupees instead of dollars. This shift away from the dollar is a growing trend, and if it continues, the US could lose one of its most effective tools of global control. For countries that have been on the receiving end of dollar-based sanctions, the appeal of a world where they aren't bound by US financial rules is stronger than ever. And here's the bottom line, my friend. This is the real reason why the US is so worried about China and its BRICS allies. If the US dollar loses its status as the world's dominant currency, it could trigger hyperinflation in America and send its economy spiraling into collapse. It's a scary thought, right? But what do you think? Do you agree with this perspective? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button to stay updated with all our latest content.